I'm Bambi Francisco for Vader TV. Well, for years, venture capitalists have put entrepreneurs through the ringer before giving them money, but times are changing, and a lot of that is thanks to Adeo Resi, who founded The Funded. The Funded is a site where CEOs and founders rate and voice their often snarky opinions and ratings about VCs. Adeo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Bambi.
Well, your site is basically almost a year old. March 2007 you launched.
Correct.
And today you have nearly 6,000 members, so congratulations for building your community.
It hasn't been easy. I think when we first started, there were 25 of us, mostly my friends. Mm-hmm. And the idea was you could only join if you were invited by one of those 25.
Oh.
So we grew at a snail's pace.
Mm-hmm.
Then one of the original members suggested, hey, why don't you let people apply? And that happened on March 14th, 2007, and literally within 24 hours of allowing any CEO in the world to apply, it somehow appeared on TechCrunch, and it very quickly scaled. I think that one day, because there was a spiraling media effect, we took in something like 1,000 membership applications.
Wow. And now you're taking, VCs are now joining your site as well, at least creating their profiles.
Correct.
But before we get into that, let's just back up a bit. I've been on your site many times today. I actually applied to be a member. But the one thing that you notice is when you go to your site, and one thing that many people bring up is sort of this anonymity, the being able to post and being anonymous. And I know that you've said on your site that the VC world is all about reputation, and anonymity provides the freedom for entrepreneurs to say what needs to be said. But of course, then on the flip side, it's very difficult to control, to have quality control.
And to ensure that someone who's saying something is in fact a legitimate CEO. Well, here's a couple things about anonymity. Number one, just to become a member of the site, you go through a vetting process. So I'd say 97% of the members of the site today are CEOs. The remaining percentage are founders who may be in a CTO position, some lawyers and other people in senior exec positions at startups. So we vet the incoming audience to ensure that they are who they say they are. So the very ability to write a review on the site guarantees that the person of authorship is credible. Still, VCs will go and say, well, they could be credible, but we may have turned them down. So they are frustrated and writing something to get vengeance. Now, I don't know how many CEOs you've interviewed, but I'm sure it's a lot. And I don't know how many CEOs have time to seek vengeance on a VC who turned them down. Their likely next move is to go to the next VC and attempt to close the financing they need there. So a lot of the negative reviews are spawned by truly bad behavior rather than vengeance. So
what's the incentive then for a CEO? If you're saying they don't have time to sort of create a review, what's the incentive for them to actually put a review
or put any content on
there?
It's a very good question. Honestly, this is one that baffles me daily, in that probably 20 homepage reviews will appear in a good day, and dozens and dozens of other pieces of feedback, partner reviews, and numerical reviews are submitted every single day by CEOs all around the world who are incredibly time constrained because they're likely to be raising money. I think the motive at the end of the day is they realize that if they bind together and help one another, the problems they face today will be alleviated in the future. for them, because they'll gain the collective wisdom of everyone else, and for the next guy who finds themselves in their shoes. So what you actually find, just to answer a little more specifically, is it's not the middle cases that get written up on thefunded.com. It's not the pitch that went okay or the venture investor who did their job. It's the boundary cases. It's the guys who did really good or the guys who did really bad. And those are when the CEOs get most motivated to write something.
And so does that, I mean, you said on your site that you set out a guide to help entrepreneurs find the perfect funding source for their business.
True.
So are these reviews sort of helping at all? Do you have examples of how entrepreneurs are really being helped in finding the perfect VC for them, or a VC to fund them?
Sure. I mean, you know, when I met for the first time a group of members, the day that I announced who I actually was, because I was anonymous for a long time, I asked everyone in the audience, how many of you have read something on the Funded that made you decide definitively that you would never pitch the fund in question? 100% of the members raised their hand. Now, I don't know if that necessarily helps entrepreneurs, but apparently there are stories so powerful about either abuses undertaken that it has caused entrepreneurs to decide that they will not subject themselves to that situation.
So let's flip it around and just talk about the VCs. They're going onto your site.
I may not be very popular with
you may
VCs.
not be popular, but they're going on your site. You said you have about 300 VC firms. Some of them have created their profiles. But
I love
you know,
VCs.
are
though.
they trying
Sorry.
to? At some point, you might have to love VCs. But are they trying to manipulate their rankings at all? If so, how are they doing it, and how do you prevent that?
Well, you know, look, I don't blame them. I would try and manipulate my my rating on a rating site, which would probably be very low with VCs and very high with entrepreneurs right now. So that's why I bolted out and said I love VCs, because I'm trying to manipulate my rating. Hopefully it works. So everyone tries to manipulate their rating. What I do to, well, first of all, keep in mind that the audience of the Funded are CEOs. So you have CEOs reading material provided by other CEOs. So if a review is clearly, you know, they refer to it as a shill review. If the review is clearly a shill review, it is obvious. There is exclamation points and superlatives and things that you just don't often see used when talking about raising money.
So that's obvious. Yeah.
But we also now put in an algorithm that does a number of checks. And so we can actually see if a fund is attempting to manipulate their reviews, and we flag funds that do. So there are about 14 funds that the algorithm caught as clearly attempting to manipulate the reviews, possibly favorably or maybe even with negative consequences. So it's not saying they're manipulating them good or bad. They're just being manipulated somehow, and it caught them.
Talk about your business model. It's you have paying subscribers. How many? What do they pay, and what do they get?
So the theory is the following, that anyone who charges entrepreneurs should not be allowed to benefit from the free information provided to and for entrepreneurs, from entrepreneurs. So these lawyers, accountants, and consultants generally pay a membership fee. They just get regular membership in the site, and it's about $300 per year. So it's a pretty low cost considering the value they gain.
And what do they get? They get to read the information?
Access to all the information. About 70% of the information of the site is behind closed doors for members only. And then advertisers, I'm actually shocked at the number of incoming requests to advertise, but all the people involved in how $60 billion a year invested in venture capital is spent read the site. So the venture investors, the lawyers, the limited partners, and the CEOs all read the site. So if you want access to that audience, advertising is one way to go.
So I think I read somewhere, or maybe I don't know. What are you doing? What are you pulling in this year in revenue? And how does that break down?
Not enough. It's not really designed to be a revenue-producing site, honestly.
$1 million?
You know,
$500,000?
Between the two.
Okay.
I'll give you that. And I'm not trying. And in fact, making money makes me feel bad because the primary motive of the site is to help entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to make money as long as it helps entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. But if it, you know, I feel actually kind of bad making money from the site because it's like I'm achieving some success when all I want to do is help the entrepreneurs succeed.
And so is this from subscriptions you're making?
I'd say it's like about a third from subscriptions and the rest from advertising.
Okay, because you don't see much advertising around there. So where does this go?
There's a little bit of text ad right there.
Where does this go from here? Where do you see this going in a year or two? What does this become?
Ultimately, I want to ensure that great ideas around the world by great founder entrepreneurs. And listen, to defend the VCs, there are some entrepreneurs who are not genuine, who do disingenuous and bad things. But what I'd like to see is great entrepreneurs with great ideas get the funding they need to build their businesses and contribute to the broader economy and innovation throughout the world. So the success metric for me is that I can go to a room and a couple entrepreneurs come up to me and say, thanks to the funded, I was able to bring, a new solar tile to market that really changed the way, we live. And that's the success metric that I'm looking for.
So Wellington Partners 3.8, Spark Capital 3.9. I looked at Baxel, gets 3.0. How am I supposed to read that? How does that help me as an entrepreneur?
Well, really the component reviews are more useful. So, and that's a good question. I would say look at the, you can see them small here, but if you actually went into the Spark Capital page, you'd see a bigger breakout. The component reviews are useful. So, how efficient are they to pitch? How much help do they provide in operations? And, the guys at the top clearly are very good in all of the categories. When you start moving down the list, you see people who have a below average rating, let's say in operating competency. So maybe they're easy to pitch and they give you a good deal, but they're not going to support you later on. So I would just read it as a rough indicator of what to expect. You have to take the numerical and the written reviews hand in hand.
And from what I hear, at least from one person taking a look at it pretty closely, and some of the reviews I saw, it's fairly accurate.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I would agree, especially because people substantiate their positions. These are CEOs, and they're saying, like, look, here's my opinion, and here's why I believe it.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there, but so much fun going through your site, and you provide, useful, very useful information to the entrepreneurial community.
That's the goal.
Thank you. I've been speaking with Adeo Ressi. He founded The Funded. I'm Bambi Francisco.